I want to thank everyone for coming here today. We're here to talk about criminal justice reform, and I think seeing this big crowd really illustrates how important an issue this is for all of New Yorkers. Our feeling here in the Republican Assembly Conference is that improvements to the state's criminal justice system was a procedure that required a scalpel, but unfortunately the governor and the legislative majorities decided to use a chainsaw. As a result, every day we're seeing stories about another alleged felon being released from prison. This isn't fear-mongering. This isn't a rush to judgment. These are the facts. You know something's wrong when a 5-time bank robber is arrested, released, and he himself says, "I can't believe they let me out. What were they thinking? I can't believe they let me out. What were they thinking?" Clearly something needs to change, and that's what we're here today to advocate for. Sadly, people are living these tragedies. I'm very happy that we're joined here today by Sheila Harris, who's a cousin of Maria Rosie Osai, and by Jennifer Payne, here to my left. She's a mother of Sarah Toombs. Both these women lost loved ones far too soon, and both have been forced to experience a system of justice that is tilted heavily to the accused while ignoring the victims. While we hear their stories in a few minutes, I just want to take a few seconds to personally thank them for coming. It takes a tremendous amount of courage after such loss to come forward. So let's please give them a round of applause. We're also fortunate to be joined by professionals who are on the front lines trying to manage an unmanageable situation in the name of public safety. Please join me in welcoming Saratoga County DA Karen Hagan. Karen. We have Rensselaer County DA Mary Pat Donnelly. Mary Pat. Greene County DA Joseph Stanzione. Greene County Sheriff Peter Kuzminski. And Schoharie County Sheriff Ronald Stevens. These members of the law enforcement community have been sounding the alarm for months about the law that went too far, too fast, and without proper consideration for the real-world impacts. The criminal justice reforms passed by the governor and the two legislative majorities have produced nothing but danger and dysfunction. They need to be repealed, and this needs to be done right away. Yeah. So now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Colin Smith, who's going to introduce his constituent, Sheila Harris, so she can share her story with us.
Thank you, Leader. On Christmas Eve, we had a tragedy in Stony Point in the 99th Assembly District. Rosie, a young mother of 3, was tragically killed walking on her normal route, walking home. The confessed killer was released and got to spend Christmas free to cause harm again while Rosie's 3 children and extended family and friends mourned. We held a rally in Stony Point a few days after to call out how outrageous it was that this criminal illegal alien was allowed to be released after confessing to killing Rosie. Thankfully, the next day, federal authorities from ICE picked him up, but the fact is this senseless tragedy is outrageous and has really torn a hole in the heart of my assembly district and the entire Hudson Valley. I'd like to invite Sheila, who is serving as family spokesman for Rosie's family, to come on up to talk about our quest for justice for Rosie and why Sheila weeps and all family and friends of Rosie suffer. No one else should have to. And I thank you, Sheila, for being up here today, for your family's strength, and for your willingness to share a few words with us today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sheila Harris. I talked to my cousin 5 minutes before it happened. She was going to the store, and we talked about my little guy here because she had something special for him for Christmas. And she went to the store, and the next thing I know, I get a phone call, or my sister gets a phone call. And honestly, I run down the hill because if you knew my cousin, she's very funny but dramatic. And when we got the phone call, we just thought that I was going to go down the hill and, she was going to be yelling at the police saying, I just need to go to the hospital because he ran over my foot and all of that. But when I pulled up and the officer told me that all he could say was that she was breathing, it was very confusing and sad. My sister went to the hospital, and we found out, unfortunately, that due to the trauma, there was too much. Her brain was bleeding far too much for them to stop it. After she died, we found out that it was a hit and run, and that they arrested the man at 5 o'clock in the morning. He went before the judge, I believe, between 9 and 9:30 Christmas Day, was released without bail, and home by 10 o'clock to enjoy Christmas with his kids, open gifts, have breakfast. And unfortunately, her children were in Brooklyn, so the police couldn't contact them. But he was arrested, arraigned, and released all before her 3 kids knew that she had died on the street like a dog. And my thing is, how can you sign a law that allows a man to hit a woman, leave her in the street like a dog, to die with nobody there, and he gets out to enjoy his holiday that he now took from us? Christmas will never be the same. Not for me, not for her kids, not for her sister, not for her grandmother, and not for my son. This law, I'm not saying we don't need bail reform, but this law is ridiculous. You need to change it. It's not fair that a man can kill a woman and leave her to die and then go home and celebrate Christmas like nothing happened. That's not fair. You want bail reform? I'm all for it. You want, what is it called, felonies? No, misdemeanors, I'm sorry. You want to let people out with misdemeanors, nonviolent, that have been sitting in jail for 3 years? I'm all for that. But for felonies, for hit and runs, for sexual assault, no. They have no right. They lost that right. That man lost that right to enjoy anything for the rest of his life. Why should he be the one to go home and celebrate Christmas when all of us were sitting at home crying? And I don't understand, all these senators and governors signed this law, and not one of them came to her funeral on Saturday to say, I'm sorry. Not one of them showed up at the rally to say, you know what, we need to reconsider this. I feel for you. Not one of them. I don't understand it. I just don't. And what would have happened if they would have let this man out and he would have done this to somebody else? What were they going to say? Oh, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. That's not going to bring these people back. That's not going to keep me safe. That's not going to keep my 4-year-old safe. That's not going to keep your 4-year-old safe, your grandkids, your sister, your mother. It's not going to keep any of us safe. They need to fix this, and they need to fix it now before something really big happens and it's out of their control. Thank you.
God bless you. God bless you, Sheila. You said it better than any politician could ever get out there and say it. God bless you, and thank you for coming forward. Next, I want to introduce Jennifer Payne from the Syracuse area to share her story with us. Jennifer?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Do you mind holding that for
I'd be
me?
happy to.
Thank you. Hello. So I just have a few prepared words here. Thank you, everyone, for letting me be here today. My daughter, Sarah Thomas, was a wonderful mother. She was a beautiful soul. She cared for everybody in her life, especially her 4-year-old daughter. She was doing right by her daughter, having a full-time job as a security guard and taking care of her daughter's every need. She's no longer able to do this because on April 14th of 2019, she was shot and killed by Darian Shellman with a gunshot to the head while her daughter was present in the apartment. He admitted to killing her and has been charged with me and 2. He was in jail until January 9th last week when this bail reform law set him free. Nothing had changed with the case. No new evidence came into play. He was just let go because of the new bail law, reform law. The judges set his bail at $150,000 and $75,000 cash just because of the seriousness of this case. Now we have Governor Cuomo up here in Albany taking the discretion from the judges, allowing killers to walk free with no regard to the safety of the public, and is doing each and every victim a disservice. This is unacceptable. My daughter's killer is walking the streets as my family and I continue to pick up the pieces from the trauma. I am always searching faces out in public to make sure that my granddaughter never has to see his face again. I hold her every day and remind her how special her mom was. And it kills me. I have to do that because she's not here to do it. Governor Cuomo, this law is broken. Thank you. As a constituent, I say you need to fix it or throw it away. Thank you.
And God bless you also, Jennifer, and thank you for having the courage to come here and share your story. Next, we want to have some of the law enforcement and people on the front lines address the problems they see with this law. So I'd like to bring up Saratoga County District Attorney Karen Hagan. You got a stack, too tall stack here.
I'm beyond words at this point in time to follow these 2 women whose lives have been forever changed because people wouldn't listen and move swiftly and without regard for the consequences of their action in passing the criminal justice reforms that have taken effect in this state. I'm so sorry that you're here with us today having to share these terrible stories. We work as prosecutors and as a district attorney. My job is to seek justice. But my job is to seek justice for all the people involved in the criminal justice system, the victims of crime, our communities as a whole, and the defendants. Well, this system has been broken by these criminal justice reforms. We are not able to obtain justice for victims, for the community as a whole, for the safety of the men and women that we all serve, because we have disregarded the impacts of what these decisions brought about. And the two stories we've heard today, unfortunately, are only two of dozens and hundreds and thousands of cases that just since January 1st have come forward where people have been released and are causing more difficulties. In my county, the domestic violence cases that we're seeing revolving doors in and out after people are arrested for violating orders of protection, violating the orders of a court. And the judge turns around then and says, you're alleged to have violated this, now go out and don't do it again. And those people in these last 2 weeks have shown back up again and gotten rearrested. And what does the judge have to do? The same thing. The men and women in my office are working day, night, and weekends to be able to comply with the new discovery requirements that we have. It's as if all of us are on trial every single day, having to be at our peak performance to gather all of the information about every single case in a system that's designed and was staffed and is supported with the consideration that plea bargains, that resolution of cases by discussion and sharing of information has been the norm for so many years. The exponential number of cases that my assistant district attorneys are now having to fully gather each and every piece of evidence that is just, in my opinion, probably being set aside by a defense attorney because they know what they want to do, which is work the system as best they can. Just sit back and see if there's a falter, if there's a mistake or a miscue from the good people trying to seek justice by holding people accountable and responsible for their actions. I can't agree more with these ladies that there was a need for reform, but we've gone way past that. And this is not just now speculation for the months that we've been preparing and knowing this was going to fail. These are really sad, tragic examples of the failure of the system. And the reforms are not reforms. To the contrary, they have crushed and damaged our criminal justice system so that we are not properly taking care of the people whose lives are impacted each and every day in the system. So I implore the people throughout the state to talk to those who have the ability to change this, because that's exactly what needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your service to the people of Saratoga County, and thank you for coming forward and your service to the people of New York State. Next, I want to introduce and bring up Schoharie County Sheriff Ronald Stevens for his comments.
Thank you. Nothing I can say can impress you more than the two family members that spoke today. We cannot let another story happen. Governor, you've got to look at this. You've got to look at this. We've got to take ownership and we've got to correct it. Nothing in this law or in these reforms puts more law enforcement officers on the street. Quite the contrary. We'll be doing much more administrative work. The demands for getting your reports done and getting them to the district attorney's office, the demands have increased tremendously. All of law enforcement, as well as the district attorney's office, the demands have been increased. Nothing here makes doing our job any easier. So you're going to see, if this law continues, we're going to see fewer and fewer law enforcement on the street because they're going to be just trying to maintain the administrative requirements to meet the demands with discovery. And then we're going to have the reoffenders. We cannot allow another tragic event like we've heard today. Governor, I'm asking you, let's change these demands and let's change these reforms and these laws. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you very much, Sheriff. You know, one thing we try to do in our conference is not just put out a lot of political rhetoric. We try to back it up with substance. And we're lucky to have a fellow member of the conference, Joe Giglio, who's been working on this issue from the start. And he knows this issue back and forth. And I would like Joe, if you could come up and tell him a little bit about what you found out and what you think we ought to do next.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Joe.
To the victims and their families, my heartfelt sorrow for you. God bless. What we did as a conference was go out there when this bill was passed and decided to take it apart bit by bit to see what it really did. And as we did that, we found out more and more and more bad things. Most of them you've already heard. And that's been the problem. But part of what we found out recently, and which is the most troubling, one of the most troubling things to me, is when this was passed, the governor said, well, New Jersey did it and nothing happened there. Well, we researched New Jersey, and what you see here tells us what happened with New Jersey. They took 3 years to implement this. They put funding in it. They had training. They had danger included. None of that's in New York's bill. Then we decided, as we kept doing our researches, we looked into something else that really troubles me, and this is what's called the New York State Justice Task Force. And believe it or not, they have a thing on bail reform. Here's the report on bail reform. They've been around since about 2009, and I think their study was done before, according to this, February 2019. The garbage bill that was passed in the budget that they were afraid to have stand alone this was out before it. This is done by the chief judge and that task force. Has any of you seen this one before? I can tell you we didn't. And that's the trouble. Listen to this one. Come up with a whole bunch of different plans, including funding, advanced training, and public safety. Why wasn't it included in the bill? Why weren't everybody briefed on this? Why haven't we taken any time to get this right? Justice can be uneven. Justice is unfair to the poor. We haven't argued that. Everybody up here said bail reform is necessary. But throwing out the whole criminal justice system in favor of the criminal, not protecting public safety and trying to defend that? That's outrageous. Outrageous. So us as a conference who's always tried to be on behalf of the victims, as you can see, we didn't have much of a say in this. So we voted no, and we went to work. And this is what we found out. The things that have been talked about today, this report, go look up New Jersey. We can get you copies if we have to. We'll show you that. This is online somewhere, and I want you to ask the people that voted for this bill or that brought this forward, and our governor who said, the world didn't end in New Jersey. It ended here. It ended right here for these people. That's what's aggravating. That's what breaks your heart, because our job as public servants are to protect and serve. We're supposed to make New York a better place. And although the victims are poor too, not just the criminals. Let's not forget that either. And that's why our blood boils when we sit here today and listen to these things and look at this child. If that doesn't break your heart, nothing will. This isn't political rhetoric. This is the real world, folks. This is what we're trying to prevent. We're supposed to do this. And until somebody starts listening and keeps telling, well, they did it in New Jersey. Took them 3 years. This called for a long-term solution, implementing it by steps. That's why we're advocating to throw this garbage out and move forward the right way and have every stakeholder, the DAs, the Sheriff's Department, our men and women that are out on that street, who's protecting them? You tell me that. Who's protecting the people that sacrifice all the time? The DA will tell you they work day and night. And now they're going to be doing administrative stuff, Sheriff. How do we do that? How do we keep DWIs off the road? How does all that happen? It doesn't. So I'm here today to say, as a conference and under the leadership of this conference, we went out there and we've got facts for you. We have facts. These two things alone should be enough to tell you that they only did it because they could. They weren't interested in the ramifications. They could, and they did it without anybody's input. When the input was right here. So with that, I will close and again say God bless you both and God bless you all.